If you need a secret weapon to climb right now in Hearthstone, I have some deck ideas for you.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
That's right. In this video, we're going to talk about some sleeper decks. And what that means is decks that aren't very popular and, in fact, have less than a 1% popularity rate on HS Replay, but are also winning games. So these are decks with positive win rates that have very low played rates, meaning not many people are going to know what to expect when you play your deck, and they may not know how to counter you, which could give you a really nice advantage. That said, let's take a look here at the 5 top sleeper decks that I was able to find right now. Up first, this one might shock you because it's Demon Hunter, and it seems like Demon Hunter maybe could be everywhere on ladder right now. Of course, a popular new class in Hearthstone, but big Demon Hunter specifically isn't being played all that much. Most people are preferring more tempo or OTK styles of Demon Hunter, and by playing this list, you can really start to catch your opponent off guard. They might think, oh, I'm facing an OTK Demon Hunter, because a lot of the early game cards look the same, but then you start dropping these enormous threats on board with Pit Commanders and Hulking Overfiends, and of course your Priestess of Furies, and maybe they mulliganed in a way that left them without any removal, thinking they need to stock up on life instead, and you just hammer them with giant dudes. Or alternatively, they just use a lot of their removal on earlier minions because they don't really expect that big Pit Commander to hit the field at any given point. But essentially, this deck is a pretty easy one to play. You just want to stay alive in the early game, start to play things like your Raging Fell Screamers to help you cheat out some big demons, and then slam big demons and just overwhelm your opponents with raw stats on board. There's not too much nuance or difficulty there. So a pretty cool deck that's both unexpected, it's going to surprise people, pretty easy to play, and has a surprisingly high win rate. This might be the best deck in this video. In fact, beyond that, some balance changes were recently announced to Demon Hunter, and you'll note here in this list, none of the cards getting changed for Demon Hunter in the latest balance patch are going to be affected in this deck. So this deck is actually untouched. It will not be nerfed, which means it's not only good now, but it might get even better after that balance patch. So next up here, let's take a look at the Handbuff Boar Hunter. And I don't know exactly what you want to call this deck. It's kind of a face hunter. Maybe you could call it an aggro hunter, possibly even a dragon hunter, given that it has the old Dragon Hunter package, the aggro Dragon Hunter package with things like Rotnest Drake and Scale Rider and Fairy Dragon and Corrosive Breath. But complementing that package is a whole new package available in Ashes of Outland here, thanks to the card Scrap Shot and Scavenger's Ingenuity in particular. Both of these are able to buff cards in your hand, and when you have Stone Tusk Boars specifically as your only beast, that means you can draw them out of your deck with your Scavenger's Ingenuity, and then guaranteed buff them with Scrap Shot, and then copy them with Ramkahin Wild Tamer, setting up 2 really big boars in hand, or sometimes even more boars than that in hand, that all have a ton of buffs and can provide a lot of burst damage from hand, all while the rest of your deck is actually still doing a lot of damage in the meantime. So the boars serve as perfect finishers that help you kill your opponent. So it's a mix basically of a traditional face hunter with kind of a combo OTK style deck almost, setting up these gigantic boars. And what that means is this deck can very efficiently just steamroll your opponent with lots of pressure and then finish them off when they least expect it with those giant boars. It's also a lot of fun to set up this boar win condition, and of course playing fast and winning games quickly is also a lot of fun, and most people won't really know exactly what to expect because this deck is still flying under the radar. Moving on here to Bomb Warrior. This is a deck and a package of cards here that's been around for a while with the Clockwork Goblin, Wrench Caliber, Blastmaster Boom package, but it's kind of went away for a bit, but now it's back in force thanks to cards like Corsair Cash, now helping you draw your Wrench Caliber, giving it extra durability, ensuring that you can provide even more bombs into your opponent's deck, which of course adds more inevitable damage that they have to deal with. Also, new complementary cards like Blood Boil Brute and Kargath Blade Fist give this deck some rush reactivity to help it keep up on board. So you've got that combination of a deck that's just staying in the game, pressuring your opponent, keeping them busy, all the while you're planting tons of bombs in their deck so that you can eventually just overwhelm them with that damage and win, making this a really fun deck to play. I love this style of deck. There's chaos, waiting to see if they're going to draw those bombs or not. But you also just get a lot of cool value minions like Kargoth and Blastmaster Boom that's just feel good to play. I love those big Kargoth Prime plays and the big Blastmaster Booms where you summon a ton of stuff. So it's a really cool list that does something a little bit different for Warrior right now. Risky Skipper also creates really cool opportunities with this deck to gain tons of armor off cards like Armor Smith, so those can be some fun moments as well, and can shift this into almost a control deck in some cases where you're just like fatiguing and outlasting your opponent until those bombs finally go off. So a couple different ways to play this one, and an exciting take on Warrior that, again, most people won't know exactly what to expect or where your deck is going, which can give you a huge advantage. So to finish off the video here, I actually have two different Shaman lists. Up first is Totem Shaman. And I didn't really realize this deck was so under the radar because I've made a video promoting this deck. I think Trump even made a video as well talking up this deck. So a lot of prominent creators and players in the Hearthstone scene have already talked about Totem Shaman and given it a lot of limelight. Nonetheless, it's still not being played all that often. I think that could soon change. So you might want to hurry if you want to surprise people with Totem Shaman. But nonetheless, the popularity still pretty low, and it's a really, really fun deck because you get to use cards like Totemic Might, and they're actually really powerful, surprisingly enough. But really the linchpin for this deck is the new card Totemic Reflection, which is a very powerful totem synergy card. Allows you to get a lot of stats on board very early in the game, which can just overwhelm your opponent, and then you can combine that with all these other totem buffs to just go nuts with totems on board and build a basically unkillable early board with lots of high health minions that is then leveraged via Bloodlust to really just kill your opponent outright from all that additional board damage. This list is a lot of fun. I would certainly check this out if I were you. This one's about as fun as it gets in Hearthstone right now, just because you get to use something that has been so underutilized thus far, which are totems. Who knew totems could be this strong? And then finally here, I've got an Evolve Shaman list, a different way to play Shaman, but I had to feature this one because my card reveals for this expansion were Bogspine Knuckles and Bogstrock Clacker, the two Evolve synergy cards for Shaman, and of course, they're really what powers this deck to such great success in combination with Mutate and Explosive Evolution, two other Evolve-style cards. And then, of course, you got great evolved targets like Desert Hare and Mogu Flesh Shaper in this deck in particular, which allow you to create some really crazy scenarios, turning those 3 Desert Hares into a lot of big 4-drops all at once with your Boxspine Knuckles, or, of course, cheating out a Mogu Flesh Shaper at a very low cost and then evolving it into a big 10-drop early in the game. On top of that, just a lot of value generation and minions in particular that have powerful battle cries that make for good evolved targets. So you realize the battle cry value and get that activation out of the card, and then you still turn it into a great body, because Battlecry minions often have weak bodies attached to those powerful effects. And although there are a couple different variations on this list, I think most prominently is a Galakron Evolved Shaman. This is a little bit of a different spin that's similarly competitive, but has some tools in it that people might not expect and could really help you catch people off guard. And that, of course, goes a long way on the Hearthstone ladder. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for our 5 sleeper decks here. There are, frankly, quite a few more sleeper decks out there. There are a lot of pretty good decks in Hearthstone right now. There may be a few at the very top of that echelon of the most competitive things, but you can play a lot of things successfully and still rank up, particularly if you're at a lower rank than, say, Legend or Diamond players. So you can't really go wrong right now in Hearthstone in a lot of ways, but these lists are a good start. And of course, if you're watching me, that means you got access to lots more crazy decks. I'm uploading more decks every single day that are usually pretty competitive. Again, not the best, but still fun and winning lots of games. So that said, thanks much for watching this video. Of course, feel free to take these decks out for a spin. If you have some sleeper deck that's working really well for you, you think people need to play, share that in the comments below. And of course, check out all the decks in the comments below. People have really cool ideas and really cool lists down there. That said, thanks much for watching, and until next time, game on.